Okay, let's unpack this. For years, the Ghislaine Maxwell legal saga. Well, it's been one of the highest profile cases, really. Accountability, you know.
Absolutely.
And now it looks like we've hit what seems to be the definitive legal end for her criminal defense side of things. The U.S. Supreme Court, they've declined to hear her appeal.
That really is the crucial takeaway here. I mean, when the Supreme Court rejects a petition like this, especially for such a watched case, it's more than just procedure. It's like the final stamp of approval on what the lower courts decided.
And they did it without comment, right? Just
Yeah.
rejected it this week.
Exactly. No explanation given, which leaves her 2021 conviction totally intact, 3 counts of sex trafficking, conspiracy, the whole thing. And that 20-year sentence stands.
So our mission today, what we wanted to dig into, is what this really means for her time in prison. We need to look at that complicated legal argument she used, the one about the 2007 non-prosecution agreement.
The infamous MPA, yes.
And then we need to pivot, because this decision seems to unlock a whole new phase, doesn't it? Political fallout, what happens next?
It really is a critical turning point. This ruling formally backs up everything the appellate courts decided. It means, for all practical purposes, Maxwell's challenge to the conviction itself is, well, it's over.
Finished.
Right. Any legal fight left has to be about something else entirely, not whether she's guilty.
Okay, let's maybe start with the conviction itself, just a quick recap. Because the seriousness of the crime, that's central to why people are reacting so strongly to this news.
Definitely. Maxwell was found guilty for playing a key role, a central role, in Jeffrey Epstein's long-running criminal operation. The conviction was for helping groom and exploit vulnerable teenage girls. Some were as young as 14.
Just awful.
And the prosecution showed she wasn't just, on the sidelines. She was vital to it. She befriended the victims, arranged their travel, often under false pretenses, and sometimes even participated in the abuse directly. That 20-year sentence reflects how deeply involved the jury found her to be.
Her lawyer, David Oscar Marcus, put out a statement pretty quickly, said they were deeply disappointed. But he also vowed to keep pursuing every avenue available to ensure that justice is done. Which sounds like they're not giving up on finding some angle.
Oh, they almost have to say that, professionally. But those available avenues, they're getting narrower and narrower.
And speaking of paths closing, we should mention Jeffrey Epstein himself, the architect of it all.
Right. He died by suicide in a Manhattan jail cell back in 2019 while he was waiting for his own trial.
And importantly, the Justice Department looked into it and reaffirmed that conclusion. Suicide. They pushed back hard against all those conspiracy theories that are still floating around.
They did. So while the criminal story ended for Epstein there, the fight for accountability for the people around him, well, that's what this Maxwell ruling helps finalize, at least in terms of her conviction.
And what about the victims? How did they react to the Supreme Court's decision?
The response from the victim community was immediate and very strong. We saw that powerful statement from Virginia Giuffre's family. She was one of Epstein's most prominent accusers, of course.
Yes.
They praised the court's decision. They basically framed it as, the final word.
They said something about ensuring she serves the whole sentence, didn't they?
They did. Committed to ensuring that convicted child sex trafficker Maxwell serves out the entirety of her 20-year sentence in prison where she belongs. For them, this Supreme Court decision really solidified the justices they'd fought so long for.
Justice confirmed, as you said. And that phrase, it leads us right into the legal nuts and bolts, doesn't it? Because her appeal wasn't about the victim's testimony at all.
Not at all. Her whole challenge was aimed squarely at the government itself. It was a procedural fight.
Exactly. She wasn't arguing she didn't do the things they said she did. She was arguing the government, specifically the New York prosecutors, didn't have the right to charge her in the first place because of a technicality going way back.
That's it, precisely. The whole appeal hung on that 2007 non-prosecution agreement, the MPA, that Epstein cut with federal prosecutors down in Florida, the Southern District of Florida.
Which brings up Alex Acosta. He was the U.S. attorney there at the time, later became labor secretary under President Trump. That MPA was super controversial even then.
Highly controversial.
Yeah.
Because it shielded Epstein, and this is the key part, his alleged co-conspirators from federal charges in Florida.
So Maxwell's lawyers tried to stretch that. They argued, okay, she might have been an alleged co-conspirator back then.
Right.
So that Florida deal should have stopped the feds in New York, the SDNY, from ever prosecuting her years later.
It was a big legal leap they were trying to make, connecting that Florida deal to the separate New York investigation.
But the Justice Department fought back successfully. What was their winning argument? How did they convince the courts the Florida NPA didn't tie New York's hands?
Well, what's fascinating here, and why the Supreme Court likely just swatted it away without comment, is that it came down to a technicality. A bureaucratic one, really.
Yeah.
The Justice Department, specifically the Solicitor General, D. John Sauer, argued that DOJ's own internal rules, well, they would have required specific written approval from higher-ups in Washington, D.C. for that Florida NPA to apply outside the Southern District of Florida.
Ah, okay. So because the deal was potentially shielding people nationwide, not just in Florida, it needed a sign-off from Maine Justice.
Exactly. And the government's argument was simple. There is no evidence that occurred. Plain and simple. No proof that anyone higher up ever approved making that Florida deal national in scope.
So without that signature, that approval.
Without that specific approval, the agreement only bound the prosecutors in Florida. It left the SDNY, which is famously independent, totally free to bring their own charges against Maxwell later on.
So the failure of her appeal isn't about the facts of her crimes. It's about a missing piece of paper, essentially, from the DOJ back in 2007.
In essence, yes. It's a validation of the process of the New York prosecution based on DOJ procedure, not a reevaluation of her guilt or innocence. It shows the power and independence of different U.S. attorneys' offices.
Especially the SDNY. They're known for that.
Absolutely. They showed that a deal made by someone like Acosta in Florida couldn't just automatically bind them without the proper channels being followed at the highest levels of DOJ. It settled the legal question. The New York case was legitimate.
Okay, so the criminal appeal door is slammed shut, which brings us back to her lawyer's promise about every avenue. That sounds like politics.
It certainly points in that direction, and the political ripples started almost immediately after the Supreme Court decision.
How so?
Well, Congress now feels it has a clearer path. While her appeal was technically still alive, she could potentially argue testifying might prejudice her case. But now, that argument's gone.
So committees are gearing up to question her.
It looks that way. We heard from Representative Robert Garcia. He's on the House Oversight Committee. He said Maxwell must now answer our questions truthfully. There's a strong feeling she holds keys to understanding Epstein's whole network.
She's one of the few central figures left who's alive and, well, accessible, potentially.
Exactly. Which leads us to this sort of ultimate long shot.
Yeah.
The potential Hail Mary pass. A presidential pardon.
Really, a pardon. Given how toxic this whole scandal is, I mean, could any president actually risk the political damage? It seems almost impossible.
Politically, it's incredibly toxic. Highly unlikely. But technically, legally, it's still a theoretical possibility, or final recourse, you could say.
Has there been any actual talk about it?
Her lawyer has kind of hinted at it, maybe just for leverage. And former President Trump did acknowledge it as an option publicly at one point, though he certainly didn't endorse it.
So probably not happening unless she has something huge to trade.
That's the calculation, isn't it? The only way it becomes even remotely plausible is if she possesses information deemed so incredibly valuable politically or legally to a sitting administration that they decide the risk is worth taking, which seems like a very high bar.
Okay. And this ties into all that speculation about whether she's cooperating, right? There was that strange sequence of events earlier this year.
Yes, we have to look at that timeline very carefully. Earlier this year, Todd Blanche, the Deputy Attorney General.
Wait, wasn't he Trump's personal lawyer at one point?
He was. That connection definitely raised eyebrows. So Blanche conducted a lengthy interview with Maxwell down at a Florida courthouse.
Which is weird in itself, right? The deputy AG personally interviewing a convicted prisoner like that.
Highly unusual. And then came the next piece. Shortly after that interview, Maxwell was moved, transferred from a high-security federal prison to a minimum security facility in Texas.
Wow! High security to minimum security. That's a huge difference.
It's a massive operational shift. Usually that kind of move is for inmates getting close to release, or, crucially, for those who've provided significant cooperation.
So everyone started asking, what did she give them? What was the deal?
Naturally. The Justice Department called the move routine, but the timing, it's hard to ignore. If she is providing information, you'd guess it relates to Epstein's network, the powerful people involved, maybe financial dealings.
Or maybe it's just about her behavior inside.
That's the official line. But the transfer, at the very least, suggests the government views her differently now, for whatever reason, than they did just a year ago.
And didn't some details from that interview with Blanche come out? Something political?
Yes, the DOJ released some parts of it,
Mm-hmm.
and it was striking. Maxwell specifically praised Donald Trump, called him an extraordinary man.
Really?
Yes. And she went out of her way to deny ever seeing any misconduct involving him or really anyone else in Epstein's prominent social circle.
Okay, that sounds less like legal testimony and more like signaling. What's the play there?
It's probably doing double duty, you know. If she's hoping, however faintly, for a pardon down the line, she's signaling loyalty. If she is cooperating on some level, maybe she's drawing lines in the sand about who she won't implicate.
Protecting certain people.
Or just trying to manage her own narrative. It's definitely political chess being played from inside a minimum security prison.
And if we connect that to the bigger picture, you see why some in Congress are pushing so hard for more documents, right?
Exactly. House Democrats especially are trying to force the DOJ to release all the remaining files on Epstein and Maxwell. They clearly believe the full story of that network, who was involved, hasn't come out.
But that effort's gotten bogged down.
It has. It's been delayed. There are internal fights in the Republican-led House, the usual Washington stuff, which led Representative Adelita Grichalva to ask that very pointed question.
What was that again?
She asked publicly, what are Republicans so afraid of? One more vote for accountability. So the fight over releasing those documents, that's become maybe the main political battleground for this whole scandal right now.
So summing up this Supreme Court ruling, it gives us the final legal word on her conviction. It's solid, one of the biggest, most significant prosecutions to come out of the whole Epstein mess.
It really closes the book on her criminal appeal.
Yeah.
Gives the victim some legal finality there. But the whole saga, from that shady 2007 NPA, through the trial, the conviction, and now all this political maneuvering, keep raising these deep questions, doesn't it?
About what?
About power, privilege, how justice works or doesn't work when extremely wealthy and connected people are involved in the U.S. It shows that maybe privilege can buy you years of delay, lots of legal firepower.
Not ultimate immunity. Not all.
Yet not in this case, it seems. The legal system eventually held her accountable for her specific crimes.
So the courtroom drama might be mostly finished for her, but the digging, the political side, the historical reckoning, that feels like it's just getting started.
And this raises a really important question for you, the listener, to think about moving forward. Maxwell's release date is currently set for 2040, a long way off. But this political pressure cooker, Congress wanting answers, the fight over documents that's happening now, it's only getting hotter. So how will this ongoing, politically charged search for the truth about the entire Epstein network shape how we understand this scandal years from now?
Could it affect others, people who haven't been charged?
That's the question. Could it impact reputations, maybe even future legal actions, long after Ghislaine Maxwell has settled into whatever routine she has in that minimum security facility? That part of the story, it's still very much being written.